Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. Today, we start our long journey into the universe of Remnant. A journey that spans space and time. Well, a little bit. See, something I left out of my discussion for Remnant last time is a key detail of the game. Procedural generation. That's a fancy way of saying everything is randomized and no two campaigns are the same. Map layouts, the bosses you fight, all of that can differ from one person to the next. In fact, you may go a whole campaign and never find a new set of armor or something similar. It happens. This also means the lore and some story pieces can be missed or completely left out of your campaign. So multiple playthroughs is a good thing. The ability to replay this title is astronomically high. Or you could just leave that problem to me if you're really not interested in doing so. In some ways, Remnant acts like Doom. You have an A to B story that you can understand well enough, but sometimes the why can be lost in the mire. But that's precisely the reason I love it. I love a good detective story that I have to figure out. The opening to Remnant, well, that got its hooks into me almost immediately.
What can we do when our last hope fails? That you must discover. Our last hope sailed this sea before you, in search of an end to the beasts that have hunted us for generations. An end was found, or so we thought, when the dragon rose into the sky like a phoenix, blazing in flames of agony. But our hero never came home. Only the storm, the beasts, the unshakable dread that something had twisted and turned. The journey will not be easy. Storm swirls round the dragon's tower like a shroud. The dragon may be dead, but in its ashes, I fear something else has awoken. You will fight for every step. You must reach the tower, learn what became of our warrior, face what lurks within. When our last hope fails, another shall take its place. So long as we have breath.
This voice, which is unknown to us right now of who it may even be, tells us several pieces that we kind of need to know going forward. One of the biggest being that somebody came before us, somebody that sailed this ocean, somebody that went to this tower, and somebody that was possibly lost to all of it. We have no idea. All we know is that the Root, our major opponent, seems to have gotten stronger since the time of this person going out to try and stop this dragon. There's very little that we know about what's actually happening so far within the title. It's ambiguous, it's open to interpretation, and that's mostly because the narrator, the person that we hear, also is unsure. There's also something behind this person, but it goes further back. It goes further to Chronos, the original title for Remnant's universe, but that's again for a completely different day. At this point, all we know is that we are left with a sword, a small boat, and we have to travel across this ocean to figure out what happened to the tribe member that came before us. That's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big load for us to try to figure out. And there's a lot behind it. And of course, we're just getting started. All of these questions you start to form for your journey, and you need to keep your main mission in mind. And of course the main threat, the Root. This semi-Lovecraftian species made of brambles and bark have their own mysteries. Where do they come from? How do they exist? What are their goals? I mean, it doesn't take too long to figure out what they think of you, of course. that's the end of the game. So like, yeah, thanks for coming out. Okay, kidding. Things were just getting a little too somber for my liking, and we all know I like to put a joke in once in a while. But in a way, that's how Remnant is.
Hang in there.
Hurry
You're
up,
gonna be
Ellen!
okay.
We got company! Move! Move!
Because as you are pulled away by a mysterious couple,
You're awake.
you wake up to find a kid by your bedside. You've been saved by pure luck, pulled from the... Well, I could have said ashes there. I wouldn't be wrong. It's a theme for a title, and an obvious one. I mean, it's in the name of the game, after all. You come to find the boy in front of you is named Wallace. He's the younger brother of the man you attempted to save outside of the place you're now in, called Ward 13. Wallace complains of these odd dreams that he's been having as well. They seem real to him, seem to terrify him each night he has them. He even told his brother Mark not to go outside as he saw him die in one of those dreams. These are foreboding, and certainly will not be the last time we hear of them. Well, maybe it's the last time we hear of Wallace's dreams. After a conversation with Commander Ford, Ellen, we find out things aren't going quite well for Ward 13. Without power and a means to really escape or get out of the ward is on a constant lockdown. Only one person seems to brave the city for scrounge and supplies, named Ace. But back to Ellen. Her grandfather was the founder of the ward, or at least using the ward as a refuge. The wards themselves were used as a military facility, research and development, and all that back in the 1960s. On what exactly? Look, this is an overview for now. You expect details on this stuff? No, I'm not going over anything revolutionary here. Most of this information you can obviously get in the beginning of the game. But without knowing these basic pieces going forward, you might be very lost. To me, it's always been very important to remember the basics of any good story, especially when you start to see that your personal objectives begin to shift. What you're told to do at the start of the title becomes murky and skewed. You opened to a voice that told you your mission. How you managed to figure out what's next, well, that's entirely up to you. No guidance, just knowing a general direction, just pointing until you go that way. And where to go, how to manage yourself, what to do, what to use, how to equip yourself and better prepare for any situation that may come your way. All you have is a boat, the clothes on your back, a sword, and a small backpack, and the well wishes of the people you leave behind. So what do the troubles of a place you have no connection with matter? What do the troubles of a boy with bad dreams matter? What do the familial bonds of granddaughter and grandfather matter to you? All of these questions, all of these choices, and they almost all lead back to your quest. I mean, of course they do, because this is fiction for Worldstone's sake. And really quick, let me just touch base on a couple pieces otherwise of lore that sort of exist out there within the world of Remnant, especially this early point in time that we're at. After you end up going through the Worldstone, you come to the hideout where Commander Ford had originally started a lot of, well, his expeditions into the city and eventually to other connective pieces that we'll get to later. I'm trying to dance around that as much as I can here still, just for a little longer. What we do find, though, in the basement is that this ward that was here did some research on, well, kids. There's actually a lot of stuff that happened, and they focused more on dreams and a connection that was made with things called guardians and what they kind of mean overall for places and other existences and connective tissue that exists within the title. Again, these pieces are not entirely known to us, but we have basic principles and ideas. We learn of several different connective pieces that I feel are important to talk about at some point or another. Ones like the Fuzzies, for instance, which has this odd relation to an actual fiction story that was written in the 60s by a man named Piper. But again, just kind of teasing, just want to put it out there that there are these connective pieces that I do feel are very important to talk about, and we will. You'll also find out about what happened with the route and how they were overrunning most of pretty well every ward that was out there. Ward 13 is not alone. That's why it's number 13. There's also a 16. There's a 17. Those at least you come to find. and so we can assume there are ones underneath that as well. But for the surrounding area, there is Ward 13, 16, and 17. And that's as far as it kind of goes for us, at least for the time being. But with all of these pieces in mind and me jumping a little out of order, it's time to set off to the city, to see just how bad things are with the root out there, to see if you can find your tribesmen, at least. To see if you can find a reason for why the root have only grown stronger, and ultimately try to stop it. But do you know what's even to come, traveler? Or are you just making it up as you go? We'll leave things there for now. Several of the concepts and ideas I've laid out in this segment are going to be very important for down the road. I'm actually pondering talking about the Dreamers a bit more before we really keep going, as they are so important to the overall story of Remnant. They even cover another major theme of the story and have to do a lot with influence on humanity, but anyway, that's for another time. I'd really like your thoughts and feedback on this little piece, because I know that, again, it doesn't go into anything heavy. This is out of the norm for me. I typically have these mind-blowing and very cryptic ideas that I tend to work with, and I tend to let myself really fall into those, but I very rarely talk about the basics of a game, of a story, of anything. And I don't know what you guys think of that. I tend to think, and I get lost in this general memory fragment that I know about it, and that probably means that you do too. I tend to doubt myself a lot in that regard. But again, let me know what you guys think of this. If this is a little too rudimentary, a little too basic, then let me know. That'll craft how I continue to cover things out for us all. But I do kind of like to have this accurate and full account of everything as well, even if vague for the time being. But again, that's where we'll stop for today. If you could show some support with YouTube's fancy buttons, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, thank you all for being here. And to all of you, no matter when or where you are, I'll see you next space time. Take care.